back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well today. So I am back today to talk specifically to those of you who are wanting to get started with your first sewing project. I've had a lot of comments and messages recently from some of you who are wanting to get started, and I thought I would just put together a list of 5 tips that will make your first project a little bit more successful. These are things that are going to make it both easier for you to sew your project and also make you more happy with the final result. So I hope you find it helpful, and I'm gonna go ahead and jump in with the 5 tips. All right, so coming in at number 1, I think the thing that can really set you up for success with your first sewing project is choosing the right pattern. It's really important to choose something that is simple and you'll be able to really practice those basic skills on, but you'll still feel really pleased with the final outcome. I actually have a whole video on choosing a pattern for your first sewing project. It has some different pattern suggestions, so I'll link to that in a card just in case you're curious to check that out and get some pattern ideas. But I thought I would just share with you a couple of patterns and go over why they would either be a good idea or not a good idea for your first sewing project. So let's start with looking at a couple that would not be the best for a first sewing project. So I have 2 different ones here. You'll often find that sewing patterns have levels assigned to them, but they may not necessarily be indicative of whether it'll be really easy to sew or not, so just be aware of that. So I have one here that is marked as a beginner pattern, but I would not opt to do this one for a first sewing project because of a few different things. First of all, this pattern is a button front design, which can be a little bit fiddly and tricky to get right, so I would save that for a little bit later on once you've built your basic skills. It also has a pretty fitted silhouette, so that can be tricky to do as well. And then a couple of other things on this pattern are the set-in sleeves, which can be challenging, and then the collar. So I would choose something that is a bit more simple than this one, even though it is marked beginner. Maybe something like a tank top would be a great place to start. And then this is another pattern. This one is marked as intermediate, and this is a full dress pattern. It also has multiple darts, pleats, and a multi-pieced bodice, so that is a little bit more difficult. I would save something like this for a little bit later once you've built those basic skills. But a pattern that I think would be a great option is a simple skirt like this one. This one is also marked beginner, and it has a really simple silhouette but some interesting detailing like this fun waistband. So this could be a really fun project that you could start with that you would feel really successful with the outcome of. A few things to keep in mind as you are looking for your first pattern: choose something that is simple fitting, not super tight in a lot of areas, doesn't have a lot of darts or fit details like that, and also choose something that has relatively few pattern pieces. A skirt will usually have not very many pattern pieces, and a tank top or simple blouse as well could be a great place to start. So just be aware that the fewer pattern pieces, the easier to put together the piece will be, and you can really focus on your basic sewing. So once you've chosen your pattern, my next tip is to read the instructions really thoroughly before you begin sewing. I find this so helpful to get an idea in my head of what the entire project will be like. So I really like to read the instructions from beginning to end to get an idea of everything that I'm going to be doing, and it can help me pace myself as well as I go through the sewing project. So I still do this, but I would really especially recommend it if you are new to sewing, because it can just help you to know what to be prepared for and maybe how many steps you want to take at a time with how much time you have. I think getting that overall picture can be so helpful, so I would really recommend that you try to do that. My third tip is to really take your time and not be afraid to step away if your sewing is not going well. This is something that I have been really guilty of the opposite of so many times when I've been sewing, because I'll be struggling with something and just try to push through even though maybe my mind is tired and I need to just take a break, and I might make the problem worse by keeping on going. So if you are having issues, maybe your sewing machine is not working properly and you're just really frustrated, don't be afraid to just walk away, because if you come back to it, it's going to seem so much more simple and easy to fix the problem. So I really like to do my sewing in stages. Maybe I cut something out at a certain time and I sew just a little bit at a time to keep it really fresh and keep my brain fresh as I'm working on it. So just be aware that if you're feeling frustrated with it, it's probably a good idea to step away for a little bit. My next tip is to use a lot of pins when you are putting your seams together on your first sewing project. As I've gotten more comfortable with sewing, I don't use as many pins as I used to, but they can really help give you control of what you're doing while you're sewing. So I'd really recommend that you get some straight pins and you pin those pieces together. Make sure that everything is really secure, because that almost acts like having a third hand as you're sewing. The pins are keeping the fabric together together so that you aren't having to focus on that, and you can really focus on using your sewing machine, stitching in a straight line, and all of those basic skills that we really want to be cultivating right now. And then my last tip for this video is something that really took me a while to realize the importance of, I think, but it was something that my mom made me do a lot, and that is to iron your seams. Get really comfortable with your iron and use it a lot. This is a big difference between clothes that look really professional and clothes that don't look as professional, is if you iron as you go. So make sure to press those seams to one side or open, press them really flat. And I will put on the screen here so you guys can see the difference between a seam that is pressed down and is not. And this is something that really builds on itself as you are sewing a piece of clothing, because if you don't do it as you go, those seams are just not going to look as professional as you put the garment together. You can even take a look at some of your ready-to-wear clothes. I often notice that you can really tell that the seams have been pressed down because everything is just really even and smooth and flat. So that makes a really big difference in the final outcome of your piece of clothing. So if you want to feel really proud of your piece of clothing that you've made and really happy with it, I really recommend taking the time to do that step as you go, because it will make a big difference in how you feel about the overall piece when you're done. Okay guys, so those are my 5 tips for your first sewing project. I hope you find this helpful if you're getting started. I would love to hear updates of what you guys are working on. It makes me so happy when I hear that you're learning how to sew. So I would love to hear what you are working on down in a comment below or on Instagram. Keep me updated and let me know if you find these tips helpful. I really think that they make a big difference, and they are things that I still use as I have been continuing to sew over the years. So I hope that you find them helpful as well. Thank you guys so much for watching and hanging out on my channel today. I will be back soon with another sewing video. I'm going to be making a dress this weekend, so I should have that up in the next few days. And yeah, if you are new to my channel, I'd love to have you guys subscribe by pushing that red button down below. It really means a lot to me. Thank you so much to everyone who's subscribed recently. And if you've been around for a while, I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to watch my videos. And I hope you guys have been finding the sewing videos helpful recently. I've really been enjoying putting all of them together. So yeah, thank you guys so much for your feedback and for hanging out on my channel today. And I will talk to you guys soon. Bye. Let the sun shine.